Testing anxiety and ways to help reduce it. The reason I chose to look at testing anxiety and how I could help to reduce it is because I have seen throughout my teaching career many students who don't perform well on exams. They know the content in class, but then it comes to doing any type of formal assessment on the material, they freeze and are unable to perform. They go into the testing feeling confident and often finish the test feeling defeated. There is some sort of disconnect going on that is causing them to not do as well as they should. I also have many students this year who are not coming to school on days we have tests. They stay home, and then it is a struggle to get them to even make up the test at another time. It doesn't seem to make a difference if I allow them to test in a different environment or even alone. They simply do not want to take the test and will do everything they can think of to get out of it. The final reason I wanted to look at testing anxiety is because I have a lot of students who are just plain frustrated when it comes to taking tests. They have a mindset that they are not going to do well, so they don't bother trying. I had a student this year tell me, it's better to fail a test because you didn't try than to fail a test when you tried your hardest. That's why I just don't try anymore. She felt like no matter how hard she worked or how well she knew the material, she was not going to be successful when it came time to take the test, so she didn't even want to try. As a teacher, I want to help my students feel more comfortable going into a test. We have so much testing going on between classroom testing, district testing, and state testing that students with testing anxiety are going to spend almost half of every school year feeling awful. There has to be a way to help them and relax them a little bit so that they can be more successful and really be able to showcase their abilities and knowledge. So what exactly is testing anxiety? Anxiety, as stated by Harris, is a basic human emotion consisting of fear and uncertainty that typically appears when an individual perceives an event as being a threat to the ego or self-esteem. Some symptoms of anxiety: there's physical symptoms and psychological symptoms. Physical symptoms include increased heart rate, clammy hands, upset stomach, and lightheadedness. Psychological symptoms of testing anxiety include the inability to concentrate, feelings of helplessness, worry, and disgrace. There are three main characteristics to testing anxiety. The first one is cognitive. Cognitive characteristics are worriers lacking self-confidence. They tend to doubt their academic abilities and are often preoccupied with negative thoughts. These characteristics are what mainly affects academic achievement and test performance. The affective characteristics are what causes students to experience psychological reactions that can be present before, during, or even after testing. These reactions are the ones that include increased heart rate, feeling nauseated, frequent urination, increased perspiration, cold hands, dry mouth, and muscle spasms. Some behavioral characteristics of testing anxiety present themselves through procrastination and students who just don't have good test-taking skills or study habits. So what can we as teachers do about it? There are many different strategies that I have learned about so far that will help reduce testing anxiety. A small amount of anxiety is good and has been shown to increase performance on assessments. However, when anxiety interferes with the performance on an assessment, that's when we as teachers need to intervene. Some of the strategies that I've learned about include relaxation techniques, collaborative testing, using humor, and using notes. I'm only going to discuss a few of these. I'm going to start with relaxation techniques. This seems to be the most common way to help students reduce testing anxiety. There are two different relaxation techniques that I read about. The first one had to do with writing prompts. The study had students spend 10 minutes writing about things that were meaningful to them or just about their thoughts and feelings prior to a test. This simple act served as a way to help students reduce negative thoughts before a test. It also helped them to clear up some of their working memory space so that they could more fully use their brain on the test. Another relaxation technique is deep breathing. One strategy went so far as to teach students stop, drop, and roll. Counselors and teachers taught elementary students to actually stop taking their test, lay their hands flat on their desk, drop their head down, and roll their head to side to side. This helped them to refocus and calm down a little bit before continuing on their test. They name the technique such so that students remember it, as the famous saying, stop, drop, and roll for fires. Humor is another way to help reduce testing anxiety. Humor can help reduce testing anxiety, tension, and stress in students when used appropriately. When used in tests, humor should be positive, constructive, and appropriate for the group of test takers. Humor can be used in multiple choice formats, constructed response, and matching type questions. There are several different ways to add humor to a test. You could add in humorous answer choices to already existing answer choices. You could add in additional questions that are completely for entertainment. You could also add humor into matching questions by having one column be humorous and one column be serious. The study that I read reported that students who took the test that had humorous questions throughout felt less anxiety about the test and felt they performed better than students who took a similar test with no humor throughout. The final strategy I'm going to talk about is the use of notes on an exam. Allowing students to use notes during an exam will help them feel more comfortable in taking it. In the process of making a note sheet, many students will end up studying the material more thoroughly than they would have previously. Because they've actually spent time going over the material, they know the material better and may not even use their notes. When allowing students to use notes on exams, it is a good idea to set limitations on what kind of notes students can use. Some guidelines are: limit them to a note card or a single sheet of paper. Have them do their own note sheet, so no copying from a friend, and it has to be in their own handwriting so that they're not copying out of texts. This strategy works well for tests that do not always require a direct answer that students could copy off their note sheet. Use this on tests where students would have to apply their learning. That way they cannot just copy something that they may have written down. My biggest takeaway from my research so far is the writing before a test. This is something I tried with all of my classes before an exam last week. I had them write for 10 minutes leading up to the exam about how they felt they would do on the test, what they felt they knew well, what they felt they could have done better on or studied harder for, or even possibly what we could have spent more time on in class. After taking the test, my lowest level kids claimed that they felt better about the test. They were less worried about how they had done, and in general, they were talking about how they felt they had done pretty good. My higher level kids were commenting on how they felt more relaxed through this test and how I must have made it easier and it wasn't as daunting as the other tests. They also commented on how they felt like they did better on this test. After grading the test, overall 85% of my students scored better on this test than their previous test. I didn't change anything that I taught or how I presented any material. The only thing we did differently was writing for 10 minutes before the test. Hopefully some of these strategies will also help your students that are dealing with test anxiety to be a little bit more calm and be able to take tests and actually perform to their abilities.